Okay, so we can start now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarwat Chowdhury. I'm a policy specialist at the UNDP Seoul Policy Center and head of the resilience work here. And it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to this SDG partnership focused webinar we are having today. We are joining today from South Korea, of course, and also, of course, from Tajikistan. And we also have colleagues joining in from Germany and Canada. So we are basically covering 3 continents and various time zones. And in a pre-COVID context, we had planned to have this seminar in Tajikistan, in Dushanbe, and now we are all working on online, and I'm really happy that we are able to organize this capacity building session. So thank you everyone for being here. So for today's webinar, we have quite a long program, and to start, we will have some opening words and then followed by actual capacity building sessions from Professor Son at Korea University. And so let me, without further ado, invite the director of UNDP Seoul Policy Center, Dr. Stephan Klingebiel. Stephan, please.
Thank you, Sarwat. Good morning to our participants in Dushanbe, and good afternoon to everyone in Seoul. As the director of the UNDP Seoul Policy Center for Knowledge Exchange through SDG partnerships, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this webinar. As the title of our center implies, UNDP's Global Policy Center in Seoul has the mandate to broker knowledge and partnership between the Republic of Korea and the rest of the world. Our SDG partnerships, formerly known as Development Solution Partnerships, are the main modality for this work. I'm especially pleased that we are able to continue our activities given the grave circumstances of COVID-19 pandemic around the world. From my current location in Germany, I would like to extend a special physically distanced greetings to all the participants, including Mr. Lovasho Dustov, Director, Agency for Hydrometeorology of the Committee of Environmental Protection under the government of the Republic of Tajikistan, and Mr. Christoforos Politis, Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP Tajikistan. The Seoul Policy Center was established in 2011. It is one of UNDP's 5 global policy centers and builds bridges between the Republic of Korea and other development partners and developing nations on key development issues and supports capacity building. Our center helps to capture and share Korea's development experience with other countries with a strong focus on the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. Let me say a bit more about the center. Since 2015, our center has implemented 27 projects with 21 countries. In 2019, we implemented a total of 20 SDG partnerships in 18 countries. The way these SDG partnerships work is like we identify and package Korea's tested and proven policy tools. We select partner countries through competition, and we then broker peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and provide seed funding and policy support through our UNDP country offices. In the last 5 years, our center has been active on various green issues, sharing and exchanging knowledge on Korea's innovation practices on sustainable energy, energy efficiency, waste and wastewater management, recognizing the importance of environmental policy in the achievement of the SDGs. We have worked directly with countries such as Ghana, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Mongolia in this context. Focusing on resilience, we now have a rich portfolio on sustainable forestry. We are especially excited to be working with Tajikistan. Our resilience program head, Sarwat, will speak about the sustainable forestry related SDG partnership a bit later. Let me just end by saying that our center has been working closely with Korean national counterparts to exchange policy tools and expertise with developing countries for sustainable forestry. The Korea University, the National Institute for Forest Science, and the Korea Forest Service are the main Korean partners in this initiative, having considerable experience in reforestation and sustainable forest management in the Republic of Korea. We are very fortunate to be collaborating with highly experienced Korean forestry expert, Professor Yowhan, who will be presenting during the two sessions today. I would to thank him especially for his continued partnership with our center and our UNDP colleagues and national counterparts around the world. I hope we will have a fruitful exchange and training session today. I now invite my dear UNDP Tajikistan colleague, Mr. Christoforos Politis, and I know we had already a good collaboration with you during your first past position in Myanmar. So Mr. Christoforos Politis, over to you. Thank you.
Dr. Stephan, thank you very, very much, and thank you for also paving the way for my initial work, actually, thanking the center, thanking yourself, but also the colleagues in the center for an exceptional partnership with me in particular, but mostly with all the country offices where I have worked. It's my third very close engagement with the center, and I'm very, very looking forward, actually, to seeing this platform solidified and even benefiting further the work we're doing here in Tajikistan. Allow me first to thank Mr. Dilbarsho for his presence with us firstly today, and also for the presence of all the colleagues who are with us today. These are exceptional times, as we all know. COVID-19 inflicted on us special measures. However, COVID-19 has also enabled us to join you in Korea, in Germany, and also in Canada, quite far from Tajikistan, through the platforms we have today on Zoom, to be able to really exchange knowledge and gain from the Korea's experience. As you mentioned earlier, I have myself been a witness, and I want to share this personal experience and lessons I drew from the DSP, Development Solutions Partnerships, with the Seoul Policy Center, but mostly and most importantly with the government of South Korea, which has been extremely generous, not only in terms of supporting this initiative, but also generous and forthcoming in highlighting, recording, and projecting all the knowledge and experiences South Korea has recorded and has been, till date, extremely valuable for the progress of South Korea in various sectors. Today we're talking about reforestation, resilience, and climate resilience. But I myself have worked with the center, with several and various colleagues on a wide range and a wide variety of sectors and issues. And I think we can always, and we will continue relying on our South Korean partners and colleagues to draw on the experiences and lessons that have really scanned, that have really marked South Korea's progress towards what they have achieved today. So, colleagues, friends in Dushanbe, COVID-19 has been a wake-up call for all of us here, but regionally, but also globally. For the colleagues who are joining us through Zoom, Central Asia is actually going through what we are calling the second wave. I think the first wave has never stopped. We're still struggling quite hard with COVID-19, yet at the same time, COVID-19 has built stronger resilience in people. It has hit economies very hard in Central Asia and globally, be it developing economies, less developed economies. And this is where we're looking at really from a UNDP's perspective, but also with all of you, and particularly with hydrometeorology, but also all the partners who are around the table, to really build back better and looking at ways to expand and look at platforms where we can understand better what the environment, the development environment is required. COVID-19 has also, and I suspect all on the call would agree to that, has really enabled us to better understand and better appreciate the relationship between people and planet. And of course, prosperity as well, but people and planet, and making sure that we do not forget how important climate resilience is, how important natural resource management is, and how important, going back to the subject matter we're going to be exploring today with our Korean colleagues, sustainable forest management is. Tajikistan is nothing due to the colleagues in Tajikistan. And when you look at it, it's about also natural resource management, biodiversity management, but mostly, and first and foremost, in those difficult COVID times, it's about economic recovery as well, because the forests are richness. The forests can become an opportunity for us to meet two goals, and of course to meet ultimately various targets of the Sustainable Development Goals of 2020 agenda. Firstly, resilience and making sure that people and planet are more interconnected. And through this webinar, we're very much hopeful that we will dive further in the Korea experience, and we will learn further on both policies, but also programs and programmatic interventions. But also, on the other hand, we see forest as richness, as an opportunity to really reinvigorate economies, looking at community-level development and the interaction of communities with the forests, and how we can really build local-level economies and strengthen these economies. Allow me I will not take too long because it's a subject matter that really that is very close to my heart. But just one last point, building on what Dr. Stephan was mentioned earlier, the importance of knowledge building and really connecting, because UNDP as a platform is primarily looking at its role in bringing stakeholders together and making sure knowledge platforms exist. And this is where I would like to commend again the exceptional efforts that both the government of South Korea, but most specifically the UNDP Seoul Policy Center has been spearheaded for the system, but mostly for UNDP in particular, where we're really looking at knowledge products. And this is where we believe that through the DSP, we're very proud to join forces with Korea and have a research product that would build the evidence for stronger forest, sustainable forest management, and looking at ways where we could build on the experience, but contextualize this experience and address them through both policy and community level engagement. In closing, allow me to, of course, thank my very good friend, Mr. Varsho, for his presence again. Thank you all. Thank you to the Committee for Environmental Protection. for the Agency of Forestry, the Agency of Hydrometeorology, of course, and of course to the friends and colleagues who are from the Committee for Emergency Situation and Civil Defense for being part of this important event. And I wouldn't like to say it this way, but thanks to COVID, we're really very happy to be able to, with minimal expenses, have these exchanges, and hopefully we'll have even further exchanges through Zoom with the colleagues in Seoul as we move forward. Thank you very much, and wishing you the best for the deliberations.
Thank you, Christopher, for your very inspiring remarks, and especially highlighting the importance of COVID-19 context, importance of forestry, and the close links of people, planet, and climate, nature. I think we are all feeling how close these relationships are and how they are important to our socioeconomic existence and well-being and recovery. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Dilovarsho Dustav from the Agency of Hydrometeorology to speak on behalf of the government of Tajikistan. Mr. Dustav, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Stephan and all delegates and please take part in the discussion regarding this issue. Firstly, I want to thank also and welcome all the participants to this discussion that have been mentioned, the situation, statistics, from the also Institute of Political Environment Protection. I want to mention that the government of Tajikistan has, throughout all these years, several initiatives, forestry issues have been developed, and also and also some cooperations with the Korean colleagues, like the Korean National University, Tajikistan, seed walls, have been signed the agreements regarding this collection of the genetic research, also being stored in the seed walls of the Chowdhury and other institutes of Korea. Also, the scientific researches regarding the genetic research and other issues, also which are highly connected with the forestry and other issues. I would like to also mention that one of the priority issues here in Tajikistan, we are considering the reforestation and also issues with the having all these planting issues, getting the governmental agencies and all the issues that are being implemented here. Just to take a note in order to combine all the issues with this climatic change. I would like to stress that we cannot do anything regarding climate change, but we need to think regarding these adaptation issues, because getting the climate change, we want or not, it's going to be happening within one side or other side, but we need to, as I mentioned, to think about these adaptation measures. Want to stress that Tajikistan is one of the first and the only countries within these Central Asian countries who have been adapted to the climate change strategy in the region, and also this is one of the signs that the government of Tajikistan, the Committee for Environment Protection, is stressing also getting as a priority and strategic, one of the strategic issues in the governmental level, the issue of environmental protection, forestry protection and reforestation issues, and climate change adaptation. And also would like to mention the issue that it's really kind of good to see that all this situation issue with the COVID-19 has not prevented us to having this kind kind of the meetings, these kind of the discussions, and discussing all the issues with the to get them kind of discussed, and also being there implemented among all other stakeholders and all other parties. Just to not take long time, and also to let others to get more discussions within our stakeholders here. Once again, we would like to thank our colleagues in UNDP area, and also UNDP Tajikistan, on behalf of government of Tajikistan, Committee for Environmental Protection, under the government of Tajikistan, and the Agency for Hygiene and Technology. Thank you for your invitation, and wish you all fruitful discussion and getting the planets and targets that will be in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gustav. And before we move on to the presentation segment of our session today, I'd like to invite all participants to introduce themselves. If we were having an in-person seminar, I'm sure we would have a lot of interactions and we would be able to speak with each other. So I think it would be nice just if we know who is there. And if our colleagues in Tajikistan, please if you can tell us your names and the organizations you are with, that would be great. And then we will do this from our end as well. Maybe Christoph, you can request the colleagues. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you very much. And just to stress that colleagues, feel free to present yourselves either in Russian or Tajik, and then we will definitely have the translation.
Thank you, everyone. Specialist. I am representative of environmental protection of the Republic of Tajikistan. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Stephan.
Я Чучелин Махмудов, начальник отдела радиационной, химической, биологической защиты Комитета охраны Комитета по чрезвычайным ситуациям и гражданской обороны.
Здравствуйте, я профессор Сафаров, доктор биологических наук. Занимаюсь вопросами лесов, биологической разнообразия, в постоянном сотрудничестве с ООН. Я надеюсь, сегодняшняя презентация для нас будет весьма полезной, и много вопросов будет, и мы очень заинтересованы в том, что те материалы, которые, собственно говоря, разработаны корейскими друзьями, с тем, чтобы их адаптировать для Таджикистана, мы очень заинтересованы в этом вопросе. Спасибо.
Нормально? Да. Татьяна, менеджер проекта. Проект сохранения и устойчивого использования экосистем формирования по сохранению снежного барса. Проект реализуется в ООН.
Они не слышат переводчика. Конечно.
I think we have covered everyone. Yes?
No, not yet, actually.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought there was a pause. Please.
Смотрите, я когда говорю, я только себя слышу, я не буду с ним.
Иван Петрович.
Устян Иван Петрович, научно-исследовательский институт лесного хозяйства. Устян Иван Петрович, научно-исследовательский институт лесного хозяйства.
Сержан Авонов, представитель комитета охраны окружающей среды при Республике Таджикистан.
Доброе утро всем. Старший мастер, координатор компонента по особо охраняемым территориям с проекта UNDP по сохранению снежных.
Здравствуйте, я Степан.
Всем здравствуйте, я Степан Амирович, комитет по
Наргиз Усманова, портфолио менеджер UNDP.
Малика Хакимова, program associate UNDP.
Они слышат, они не
Okay, colleagues, the tour de table has ended from our side. As you have seen, we have a plethora of expertises, but also a plethora of agencies around the table. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for introducing yourselves. And yes, it's really nice to see that so many of you have joined. And I really hope we have a very good interactive session. I have already introduced myself, and I guess, Stephan, did you want to say something now?
Just in terms of introduction, yes, Stephan Klingebiel, I'm the director of the Policy Center in Seoul, and really great to host this webinar.
Okay. Professor Son.
Hello, good morning there. I am Yowhan Son, professor of Korea University. It is my great honor to see you and to work with you. Thank you.
Julie, please.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Julie Adiwal, and I'm a consultant with the Resilience team at UNDP Seoul Policy Center, and it's wonderful to be here today. Thank you.
Yasmin. Wait, you're not muted.
Sorry. Good morning from Germany. My name is Yasemin, And I'm also working for UNDP Seoul Policy Center, but in the Development Cooperation team, and I'm looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Hee-Chong, please.
Greetings from Seoul. It is really good to see you all, including Chris. Yeah, we really miss you a lot, and thank you for this great event. And yes, I'm looking forward to hearing about the collaboration on this forestry and resilience issue with all the participants. And let me introduce our team member as well. Over to you, Jihae.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Jihae, and I am a governance team intern at the UNDP Seoul Policy Center. Thank you.
And Harim, please.
Hi, my name is Harim Lee. I'm also working as an intern at the governance team. Nice to attend this great webinar. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, everyone. So as you can see, besides our director and Professor Son, who is our main speaker today, we have colleagues from both our resilient team and governance team. And also from development cooperation team. So it's yeah, it's very exciting for us to be participating in this webinar. So now we will move on to the presentation sessions. As you will have seen in the agenda, we have first session followed by a lunch break in Tajikistan. So, I mean, and then after that, we have 2 more presentations with Professor Son. And so, yes, so for, but we will kind of have to, we really hope this will be an interactive session. So as we go, please, you know, feel free to make comments and stop us so that we, you know, this is a good capacity building exercise and session. And we will, so we'll try to be flexible in terms of how we go. But we will stop at your lunchtime, hopefully. So yeah, for us, it's going to be early afternoon. So we are in different time zones. So please feel free to, you know, suggest if you'd like to pause for a bit, because we are planning for a long session. Okay, so with this kind of comments, let me start my short presentation on the resilience focus SDG partnerships. Yes, Yasmin, please go ahead. Thank you. So yes, so our SDG partnership in resilience portfolio, this is focusing on sustainable forestry. And the cover page of the first slide, you can see a picture of our policy center in Seoul. So we are located at Korea University. So this is the building we are located at. So yes, please, let's go to the next slide. So the SDG partnership, which was before this year, we used to call this program as Development Solutions Partnerships. So indeed, when Tajikistan sent the application, your really good application for this partnership, it was called DSP, but now we are calling our flagship partnership as SDG partnership. So this supports partner countries through systematic utilization and application of Korea's tested and proven policy tools. And we select partner countries through a competitive process. And so last year also we had a good competitive process. We had a number of applications on sustainable forestry work. And with that process, Tajikistan was selected. And in this SDG partnership, we also broker peer-to-peer knowledge exchange and sharing. And the seed funding amount can vary from $50,000 to $100,000. It depends on the fund availability and other ongoing programs. And we have this funding from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Korea. And so we are providing seed funding as well as the policy support through UNDP country offices. So the way it works is it's more like a triangular cooperation. So UNDP Seoul Policy Center here in Korea, working with the UNDP office in country office, in this case in Tajikistan, we are exchanging and sharing experiences and knowledge with the government counterparts in Tajikistan in this case. So overall project implementation, partnership and policy support is for contextual application and institutionalization of tools in some cases. So what we are saying is it's contextual applications, not exact replication of how the practice is happening in Korea, but in the context of the country, so in Tajikistan. So next, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so yes, so I would like to highlight two ongoing sustainable forestry focused SDG partnerships that were selected last year and that got started last year. So that's one of the SDG partnerships is focusing on community forestry. As we know, many countries experienced high rates of deforestation. So the Korean experience in public participation in community forestry is something we are sharing, and this is taking place in Myanmar. And this is a programmatic support in designing a process to secure free, prior and informed consent, so FPIC, from communities to provide opportunities for them to self-identify development priorities through community forest enterprises, and also includes training of forest department staff and grassroots civil society organization staff. The second SDG partnership in forestry that I wanted to highlight is focusing on forest fire management. This is a major challenge in many countries. As we know, all over the world, we do see more forest fires taking place, more devastating forest fires. So Korea does have a systematic approach to forest fire management in tracking and as well as prevention. So we are exchanging this experience and skills from Korea with Ghana. And the exchange of information and tools on forest fire prevention, management, pest control, rescue operations, and disaster recovery is taking place. Also real-time position tracking of forest fires through aviation maintenance system. Korea has very advanced aviation maintenance systems with drones and other technological uses. Forest fire management, also training in terms of firefighting, establishment of field command system. These are a lot of interesting applications that Korea has to offer, which and we are working with Ghana on this. Next slide, please. So this slide, again, going back to the first example in Myanmar, where we are working on contextualized support on community forestry, you can see some pictures of our field mission to Myanmar. We went to Myanmar last September. Our director was also there. You can see him in the picture, and actually the middle picture is something our director took. This is a picture of a Mars landslide that had taken place in Myanmar just before our arrival there. So that this is, you know, it was still there, and the stark example of, you know, how landslides can be exacerbated with deforestation issues. So, and it's a politically important country also for Korea because, and it's a strong bilateral relationship, highest rates of deforestation in Myanmar. And also another interesting linkage is it's of course, as we know, it's a conflict country. And so the forest restoration is also linked to governance, livelihoods, and climate resilience challenges. So as I mentioned, we are utilizing FPIC process and its complementary support from Norway under its UN RED program. And also unique in the sense that we are interacting with one of the armed groups that has an agreement with the government in Myanmar since 2015. It provides a good example of cooperation in a fragile and conflict country context, and bringing in both reforestation, resilience, and governance elements. Okay, next slide, please. So yeah, so this was a slide again for the example from Ghana on community, the forest management practices. So there was a study mission. Myanmar, we started going to Myanmar with a mission from forest experts from Korea. Ghana, we started the reverse order. We had a mission coming from Ghana to Korea. So we had a study mission of sustainable forestry in July last year. And instead of going through all the details, we kind of had a number of exchanges in person, obviously going to a forestry research organization, which is called MIFOS. And in the field, we visited Forest Aviation Headquarters, as also outside the Seoul in the East Coast Forest Fire Center of Gangon Province, and also Forest Technology Management Research Center. So you can see some of the pictures of our Ghanaian colleagues. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So then here you can see some of our knowledge products from the past few years, as we have been conducting research on forestry issues and Korea's success in terms of reforesting itself. After the devastation of the Korean War and the Second World War, Korea has managed to reforest itself to 60%, 65% of Korea is forested now. So it is a great example for all over the world for countries facing the challenge of deforestation. So we have a number of policy briefs which are all available in our website and that can be downloaded. And I believe Professor Son has already shared links to some of the policy briefs. So the first one on the left of the screen, which is the policy brief number 1, is actually on valuation of reforestation in terms of disaster risk reduction. And we will be speaking about that more, obviously, in today's session in our cooperation with Tajikistan. So next slide, please. So we have some pictures here from, in addition to the research on sustainable forestry, we are also representing UNDP and Korean experiences at different international symposiums and forums and conferences. So on the right side, you can see a picture of my presentation at the last Climate COP, in-person Climate COP that we held in Madrid. And so this is a session at the Korea Pavilion in Madrid, and look, on kind of Korea's experiences on institutional mechanism for successful reforestation. And then on that's the picture on the right, and on the left, top left, is a picture from last year also from Asia Pacific Forestry Week that was held in Korea. And then also a picture in the bottom from an international workshop on capacity building on climate change. This was also co-organized with Korea University, Global Green Growth Institute, so you can see, and Green Climate Fund, different colleagues, our director, and also head of GGGI and government counterparts in that picture. Okay, and also just let me mention the World Forestry Congress is going to take place in Korea next year. And from UNDP, we are also part of the preparatory committee. From the Seoul Policy Center, we are kind of representing UNDP in this preparatory work for the World Forestry Congress next year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the slide about that you can see pictures from our first interaction in January. We had, so you can see Nargis, Malika, and our colleagues from Tajikistan on top, and our team in the bottom and in our office. So basically, during that webinar, we had planned to have a mission in Tajikistan. We wanted to start with that as first step, but with COVID, we are, as we discussed before, as we are in different contexts. And so we are again very happy that we're able to have this capacity building workshop through webinar. So yeah, so this is kind of my introduction. Okay. So before we move to the yes. So as you can see in the agenda, we now have a presentation, Professor Son. So I would like to, if everyone is okay, I would like to invite now Professor Son to start his presentation. And yes, Professor Son is a very strong partner for our center, and he has been involved in different collaborative efforts with the UNDP Seoul Policy Center, including the policy briefs that I showed before. And so it's a real pleasure for us to invite Professor Son. And I think he's speaking from his office at Korea University. Thank you, Professor Son. Please go ahead.
Да, я на семинаре с Крисом Маликой.
Hello, again, I am Yowhan Son, and it is my great honor to speak with you. And I have 3 presentations today. The first one is sharing Korea's experience in reforestation and sustainable forest management and its possible application in a developing country context. As Dr. Sarwat mentioned, we had DSP, now we call SDG partnership, DSP workshop in October 2018, and I used the same material at the time. So first, I'd like to share Republic of Korea's experience in reforestation and sustainable forest management. And then after lunch, I will talk about the valuation of forestation in terms of disaster risk reduction and some other ecosystem services. And then I will introduce the detailed methodologies about the valuation of reforestation in Korea. So everybody follows me? Is it okay in Tajikistan?
Yes, perfectly okay, Professor Son. Thank you.
All right, good. Actually, I have a short movie here. I'm not sure the voice will be clear enough there, but basically this video shows the progress of reforestation from erosion control in a specific place. Let me play it.
We can't hear anything yet, Professor Son.
Oh, you don't hear? Oh, is that right? I'm sorry. Basically, it explains the progress of reforestation in a specific area. As you see here, it had severe erosion, soil erosion and landslide, and local people work together to control soil erosion, as you see here. And then people carried even some soils to the mountain, and they plant trees after erosion control. You see the very steep slope there. So they worked hard to plant trees there. You see even old people and many local people work together for a few years to recover eroded steep mountain area. And they are planting trees there. The movie was taken in early 1970s. So it's an old movie, but it shows the history of reforestation. So after a few years, more trees and shrubs are returning, and then vegetation recovered very quickly. Now you see more trees and more plants. It's becoming greener and greener. And this is taken 5 years after the erosion control. And then eventually trees are growing very well. As you see the height of the trees they planted previously. So basically it shows the dramatic changes in landscape after erosion control and plantation. Now, can you hear me? Okay, good. And then this is the content of my presentation. First, I will talk about the background of reforestation, followed by national reforestation programs and current forest policies, traditional knowledge and forest management, and then finally some implications toward developing countries. If you have any questions or if you do not understand anytime, let me know. Okay, then I will stop and explain a little bit more. Is it okay there in Tajikistan?
Yes, we hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. So I will skip the first background. I want to talk a lot about importance of forest. As you understand, forests are quite important in terms of environmental, social, and economic aspect. And forests are included in many global agendas, including SDGs and UNFCCC agenda, CBD agenda, and UNCCD agenda, so on. However, deforestation happens worldwide, even though deforestation decreased globally, still deforestation rates are high in developing regions. Republic of Korea is one of only 4 countries that has a successful history of forest rehabilitation following the World War II. The former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says, forests are also central to combating climate change. Forests store more carbon than is in the atmosphere. Deforestation and land use changes account for 17% of human-generated carbon dioxide emissions. And this underlines the urgency of a global, inclusive, legally binding climate change agreements that will address greenhouse gas emission and encourage the protection and sustainable management of forest. Therefore, countries should be encouraged to consider and share experiences on measures being taken to reduce underlying drivers of deforestation, to share best practices and lessons learned. So my presentation is one case which shows reforestation and sustainable forest management happened in Republic of Korea. And second issue is National Reforestation Program. As you see on this screen, in early 1970s, people were encouraged to plant trees all over the country. So first, activities related to reforestation before 1973. In 1951, temporary forest law enacted, and also we established local forestry cooperative we called Sallimge, which inherited from the traditional community-based forestry group, which we called Songge. So I'm stressing the importance of traditional community-based forestry group. Later, I will talk a little bit more about community forestry. Second, in 1961, officially forest law enacted, and also we promoted reforestation activities as the core strategies in economic development plan. Here I like to stress our history, which promoted reforestation activities as the core strategies in economic development plans again. And in 1967, we established Korea Forest Service under the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. And later, Korea Forest Service moved to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And then reforestation activities after 1973. Again, in 1973, KFS moved to the Ministry of Interior for active reforestation. Maybe it's similar in Tajikistan. The Ministry of Interior has strong power to control local governments, agencies, so on. So to promote reforestation activities, our Forest Service moved from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry to Ministry of Interior. And same year, we launched the first National Forest 10-year plan with the three main principles. First principle was nationwide tree plant. So as we saw the photo, we encouraged public participation in planting and tending. Tending means taking care of trees after planting. Second principle was fast-growing tree planting. Trees like poplars, black locust, alders were planted because those trees are useful to prevent flood and soil erosion. And final principle was economically valuable tree planting. Trees like pines, larch, spruce, firs, and other economically valuable trees were planted for long-term goals. So these are the three main principles we implemented from 1973. Let me show you some photos about landscape, Korean landscape before and after reforestation. On your left hand, you see the very steep slope mountain area without many trees in 1950s and 1960s. And then from 1970s, we started a strong reforestation activity, as you see on the screen. We had very active erosion control, and also all people were encouraged to plant trees, including small children, school, primary, secondary school students, even very old people, as you see here. And then very successful reforestation finally. And in 1978, the first National Forest 10-year plan was completed. During 8 years of reforestation period, more than 1 million hectares were reforested, and very sharp increase in growing stock per hectare. Previously, it was only 9 cubic meters, but after 8 years, it increased to 17 cubic meters. And during 1960s and 70s, we need a lot of fuel wood. So we established fuel wood forest. Only 2 years, more than 100,000 hectares of fuel wood forest established. And also, we had a good balance between promotion and regulation on forest. I mean, we gave incentives of subsidies and food to promote reforestation. And at the same time, we had a very strict control of illegal logging and slash and burn cultivation to protect forest. And later we had different phases of national forest 10-year plans. First phase was about reforestation, later moved to improving forest resources, again moving to sustainable forest management, and finally forest welfare stages. So the focus of National Forest 10-year plans has been changed dramatically. Again, in this table, you see the major policies and practices for different phases of national 10-year plans. So during the first phase, national reforestation was emphasized. Second phase, commercialized forest complexes were established. Third phase, sustainable forest management was implemented. Fourth phase, recreational purposes were emphasized in forest. Finally, public benefits of a national forest ecosystem were emphasized. And let me explain a little bit about the 새마을 운동 and reforestation. 새마을 means new village movement. The slogan was live well. It aimed to modernize rural societies. To support 새마을 운동, forestry side was well emphasized also. In 1971, 새마을 tree planting was implemented. In other words, government provided subsidies and food for attending to reforestation activities for local people. Even we established the 새마을 nursery, which is a community-based nursery. Government provided seeds for nursery, and after seedling production, government purchased seedlings and returned them to the local people for reforestation. It supported the local economy and reforestation activities together. And also, government supplied modified fireplaces to save energy from fuel wood, and also substituted energy sources from fuel wood to fossil fuels, coals. These photos shows a community nursery. So local people work together to produce seedlings, and government purchased seedlings from the community nursery and redistributed seedlings to local people to encourage reforestation. So finally, we get benefits of reforested land. First, average stand volume increased dramatically from 9.6 cubic meters per hectare in 1960 to more than 150 cubic meters per hectare in 2016. And the area of unstocked forest decreased dramatically from more than 3 million hectares in 1952, less than 200,000 hectares in 2007. As a result, carbon storage increased more than double from 400 kg in 1954 to more than 900 in 2012. Of course, reforestation increased biodiversity, including plants and animals. And also, total value of forest function is over 100 billion US dollars in 2014. Is it still okay there in Tajikistan? Is it too fast?
Yes.
Yes. Is it okay?
No, it's actually very. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Not too fast.
No, not too fast at all.
Okay, good. I'm continuing then. So as you see here, we see increases in animal population from 1970 through 2015. You see different animals, hare, deer, dove, pheasant, so on. In other words, after reforestation, biodiversity increased very sharply also. This photo shows proportion of public benefit of forest. So there are many benefits, including biodiversity conservation, forest landscape, forest therapy, forest recreation, watershed conservation, so on. So all these benefits are coming from forest. So forests have diverse public benefits. And then later, I will talk more about valuation of reforestation. And a simple word is like this. A modeling study evaluated average annual public benefit of reforestation. It was 1,300 million US dollars from 1971 to 2010. And the average annual cost of reforestation was about 220 million US dollars from 1960 to 2010. Then we can calculate benefit and cost ratio. BC ratio increased from 0.07 in 1972 to 5.84 in 2010. In other words, after reforestation, this ratio increased dramatically. In other words, we would say investment to reforestation is surely economically viable. Here you see annual benefits and cost of reforestation from 1960 to 2010. The bottom line shows the cost, and the other colors shows benefits. As you see in the beginning, cost is higher than benefit, but later more benefit compared to the cost. In other words, reforestation is economically viable. As Dr. Sarwat mentioned, we published policy brief series the number one is about valuation of reforestation in terms of disaster risk reduction. So after lunch, I will talk more about this topic. What is the current forest policy in Republic of Korea? The first one is sustainable forest management. As you understand, conventional forest management focused on utilization of forest resources. However, sustainable forest management focuses on balance between utilization and preservation of forest resources. And concept of sustainable forest management laid in legislation in Korea in 1994, and even Korea Forest Service developed SFM criteria and indicators and forest sustainability index for Korean forest. And Jeju experimental forest illustrates a good example of sustainable forest management achievement. So you see the policy brief number 2 indicating SFM in a specific experimental forest. This table shows sustainable forest management criteria and forest sustainability index developed by Korea Forest Service. So we have a very detailed SFM criteria and sustainability indices. And second is carbon offset schemes. Forest carbon offset scheme and the acts on management and improvement of carbon sink were established in 2010 and 2012. It expands carbon sink, promotes use of wood product and biomass energy, and also prevents deforestation and forest degradation. So forest carbon offset scheme and acts were very useful to promote more carbon sinks. Forest carbon offset projects have different types, like achieved reduction type and social contribution type, so on. To support carbon offset scheme, national greenhouse gas inventory implemented. And then forest protection. Forest fires are important everywhere. So to prevent forest fire, Republic of Korea relies on strict monitoring and early warning system. As Dr. Sarwat mentioned, officials and staff from Ghana looked upon the detailed monitoring and early warning system in Korea previously. And also firefighting and follow-up actions are taken once forest fire happen. And disease and pest. Pine wilt disease is the most influential pest. So we had a special action extermination of pine wilt disease in 2005, and even monitoring center was established in 2016. And silvicultural method and insecticide and or nematicides are applied to control pine wilt disease. This photo shows forest fire fighting using helicopters. It's very common way to control forest fire. And forest utilization. First, forest product. Even forestry sector account for less than 1% of GDP, more than 200,000 people working in forestry sector. And average net income of forestry household is more than 10,000 US dollars. In terms of urban forest, more than 90% of total population lives in urban areas. So residential urban forest increased to 46,000 hectares in 2015. So urban forests are very popular in the Republic of Korea. As you see here, this is the capital city Seoul, and mountains are surrounded, and large area of urban forest are secured. So this figure shows increase in residential urban forest area and residential urban forest area per capita. And also, we have a very popular recreation forest. Since 1980s, Republic of Korea created various recreational facilities such as National Recreation Forest and Forest Park. Even Forest Culture and Recreation Act was enacted in 2005. So health benefit from recreational forest was evaluated to amount more than 1,000 US dollars per year per person. So total benefit of using recreational forest was estimated to close to 3,000 US dollars per year per person. So this is one recreational forest near Seoul, and shows increase in number of recreational forests and number of visitors. And research and development, we have extensive research programs on forest management and utilization. In 1950s and 60s, genetic modification of plantation tree species were implemented, and later researches on method to reforest highly degraded land, soil erosion, selection of tree species, fertilization, so on, were conducted. And also we had forest soil survey to decide suitable plantation species for local environment. Also, we established experimental forest to boost research project. So this photo shows long-term monitoring sites and open field nursery simulating the impact of climate change. So these informations are in the policy brief number 2, sharing Korea's development experience in sustainable forest management. And then let me briefly introduce some traditional knowledge and forest management. Background photos shows early marketplace in 1910s. Historical governance on forest resources in the Republic of Korea The ancient Korean kingdoms managed the forest using inherited experience and beliefs. So we established plantations considering local conditions. And also kingdoms protected Korean red pine forest. In other words, the setting forbidden forest, enforcing illegal logging, monitoring forest, and controlling pine caterpillars, and so on. At the same time, kingdoms promoted cooperation with the local villagers, in other words, managing local forest by local people and allow them to collect timbers, fuels, and also kingdoms encouraged participation of local villager groups for forest management. Culturally protected Korean red pine forest enclosing the royal tombs. As you see here, the royal king tombs and Korean red pine forest enclosing the royal tombs. I like to stress the importance of community-based forestry. Communities near forest play a significant role in realizing sustainable forest management. Community-based forestry refers to processes and mechanisms that enable key direct stakeholders in forestry to be part of decision-making in all aspects of forest management. Community-based forestry regime encompasses participatory conservation, joint forest management, community forestry, and private ownership. And traditionally, we had community-based forest like a Songge. Songge is the local forestry cooperatives for laborers to collect timber and fuels, and also to prevent illegal monopolies and poaching through participatory activities. And members were frequently working with the government. Songge set strict self-regulations to protect local forest, including penalties and ways of forest management and utilization. Songge had a participatory patrol system of fires and passed for local Korean red pine forest. This diagram shows duties and benefits of Songge. Labor, fee, fire control, forest watching, those are the duties. At the same time, they get benefit, including timber, fuel wood, compost, ancestral tombs, so on. So good balance between duties and benefits. And key concept of Songge has been adapted in reforestation as Sallimge. Sallimge acts as self-governing mutual aid associations promoting cooperation between local villagers and forest owners. Members participated in site preparation, tree planting, seed collection, nursery operation, forest management, and patrols. And economic benefit and technical supports were given to Sallimge in reforestation program. So very similar to Songge, here you see government planning and regulation for local residents and participation of both government and local residents were conceptually very similar to the traditional ways of managing forests. So we adopted traditional knowledge to modern forest management practice using community-based forestry system. Finally, some implications. Still, are you following?
Yes, we are following
Tajikistan?
you.
Is it still okay?
Yes, it's very good.
Okay, okay, good.
Thank you.
Experiences of Republic of Korea regarding sustainable forest management, including traditional and modern community-based forestry, success of national reforestation, integration of reforestation activity with the economic development, ongoing research and development, all these experience of Republic of Korea regarding sustainable forest management, these are the useful to study, especially community-based forestry like Songge and Salimge, which belonged to countries' forest policies concerning forest restoration, protection, and utilization. I'm pretty sure there should be some traditional knowledge or experience like community-based forestry in Tajikistan also. And we may develop more skillful approach to adopt modern forest management using those traditional knowledges and experiences. So I think developing countries have their own community-based forestry systems. Therefore, revisiting community-based forestry would be useful as a cross-border strategy toward sustainable forest management. And I like to stress the importance of a connection between reforestation and local economy and livelihood. Local economy and livelihoods would be critical for sustaining reforested lands. In the Republic of Korea, we combined rural economic development, 새마을운동, as I explained previously, with reforestation activity, providing compensation from forestry sector like community-based nursery. So always we tried to combine rural economic development with reforestation activity. And also, I like to stress the importance of a strong leadership of policymakers and systematic governance by forest agency enable promotion of reforestation. And also, reforestation included strict enforcement to protect forest as well. So to achieve successful reforestation and sustainable forest management, top-down governance, including governmental incentives and regulation, and bottom-up motivation, including traditional knowledge and practices, and also needs leadership and authority finally need support by research and development. This is the kind of a summary of a successful experience of reforestation in the Republic of Korea. As you understand, Republic of Korea received ODA during reforestation and economic development and contributed to environment and economy of developing countries as a current duty. Given Republic of Korea's extensive experience in reforestation and sustainable forest management, sharing and piloting experience to developing countries in needs would be very useful. So this activities is one of these sharing and piloting experience to other countries. Reforestation and sustainable forest management strategies for developing countries will be constructed and guided by policies and scientific knowledge developed from ROK's experience. So you see the gradual change in landscape after reforestation from 1960 to early 2000. Okay, this is the last one for the presentation. So I'd like to ask you if you have any question or comments. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for a very detailed and comprehensive presentation and overview of Korea's experience. We will now have questions from our counterparts. They will ask the question in Russian, and our translator will help us to translate it into English. Okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Максим Ахмадулович, вы вопрос задаете? Понятно, есть вопросы со стороны аудитории, потому что они ждут вопросы по поводу опыта Кореи в лесовосстановлении, который презентован. Может, у вас, Иван Петрович? Вы у нас специалист в этом секторе.
Очень интересная презентация, и многое можно перенять в отношении опыта Кореи для лесного хозяйства Таджикистана. И вот в настоящее время вот приехали представители Южной Кореи, и начаты уже работы. Службы лесного хозяйства Кореи и наше агентство лесного хозяйства по некоторым культурам по ореху грецкому и фисташке. И мы надеемся, что тот контракт, который заключен на 3 года, и надеемся, что будут у нас положительные результаты, и, возможно, даже этот контракт будет продолжаться после даже завершения 3 лет, который вот в настоящее время меморандум подписан Республикой Таджикистан и Республикой Южная Корея. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Вопроса не было. Это было
Да.
информация о том, что есть уже
Вот так вот, все понятно.
агентство лесного хозяйства в Корее и агентство лесного хозяйства в Таджикистане. Вот просто была информация о том, что есть 3-летний проект.
No, I will retranslate it for our guest in Korea. It was a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much for sharing information about the positive experience of Korea. And we are very happy to have opportunity to sign this memorandum of understanding or contract with our Korean colleagues. And definitely now we have our South Korean colleagues who are working with us, and we would be really happy to continue our cooperation even beyond this contract, which is supposed to be terminated after 3 years. Can we ask questions now, please?
Ну, у меня, может быть, я извиняюсь, очень много вопросов, потому что интересная была действительно презентация. Ну, нужно это очень много вопросов задавать и очень много ответов и опыта. Ну, один пример, собственно говоря, мы получили, что оттуда, например, сейчас многие лесные страны получают от лесовыгода почти наравне с нефтью. В связи с тем, что те материалы, которые они привели там, это доказывается тем, чтобы действительно в будущем лес это один из источников для ВВП и для развития страны. То, что они достигли, ну, была по цифрам видно. Это общий такой комментарий.
Thank you very much. It was a really interesting presentation, and I have a lot of questions, and I believe that there will be an intensive discussion over the questions and answers. One example which we have learned from your experience is that at present the countries with forest resources have been benefiting at the same level like the country's oil exporters. And this already shows the promising future of the forestry for the GDP and also for the development of the country's economy.
Значит, у меня вопрос конкретный по нашей презентации.
I have the specific questions about the presentation now.
Там, например, был самый такой важный момент, наверное, для всех, что побудило, например, Республику Корею передать лесную службу в Министерство внутренних дел. Это очень шаг такой и отношение общества к такой переструктуризации.
There was a very important point, and I believe that everybody here recognized the importance of this decision, that the Forestry Service or agency was given or handed over to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So this is a really firm step made by your community. What was the main reason that you have handed over this service to the Ministry of Internal Affairs? Shall we wait for the response to my first question, or shall I ask all of my questions or series of questions and then we can get response? What would be okay or acceptable for our colleagues?
Например, они здесь область растущей породы для оперативной лесовосстановления использовали, а для, значит, длительного периода более фундаментальная работа, сосны, другие это вещи, тем, чтобы было много лесовосстановлений. Это были их свои породы, они очень это, или чужеродные тоже откуда-то возили и восстанавливали. Потому что здесь быстрорастущие, например, топол, акации, серии, других очень много породы там указали. А для долгосрочных сосны, это, ну, есть в Корее свои сосны, потому что это дал очень большой процент. Например, за 10 лет 1 миллион гектаров лесов было восстановлено за счет быстрорастущих.
My second question about this species you have used for long run and short run. For short run, I believe you have applied fast-growing trees, including, for example, poplar, and also you have pipes. For long run, you also have used some other species. And we see from your presentation that over 10 years period, the hectares of reforestation. Therefore, I would like to know whether you have used only your local species or you also have imported some species from other countries. Can I ask one more question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Да, пожалуйста.
Можно, да? Значит, здесь там был интересный вопрос генетически модифицированные деревья. Это имеется в виду, потому что внизу генетическая классификация была. Генетически модифицированные деревья. Это имеется в виду современные технологии генетически модифицированные для... Да, сейчас это применяется для получения быстрорастущих пород. Или здесь генетически просто модификация леса, изменение это. Или на уровне генетические изменения живых организмов. Вот что имеется в виду в докладе было это 50-е и 60-е годы были генетически модифицированные деревья. Вот это вопрос мне надо уточнить.
You also have outlined about the genetically modified trees, and you have also mentioned about the genetic classification. I would like to know what kind of method did in order to get the genetic modification intensively, or you use just the traditional genetic modification method or schemes?
Ну, на данном моменте у меня это вопросы хватит, потом дальше.
So far, I would be grateful to receive answers to this question, and then perhaps we can continue based on the discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much for your very useful questions. First, if I understand correctly, the first question was about ministry. So I explained that our Korea Forest Service was established under the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry at the beginning, but later it moved to the Ministry of Interior or Ministry of Internal Affairs to promote reforestation. Then the question was why we moved the Korea Forest Service from Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Interior. Am I right? Probably, that was the question. So as I explained, and maybe similar in Tajikistan, you have a Department of Agriculture compared to the Department of Agriculture, maybe Department of Interior or Department of Internal Affairs has much stronger power to control local community, local authorities, and so on. So to push the reforestation activities strongly, we need a very strong administrative power at the time. So we decided to move Korea Forest Service from Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Interior. That was the main reason. Is that okay for you?
Yeah. Я так понял, что усиленно контроль, это дал эффект.
As I understood, strong, strict control was resulted. If it is so, I got the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question was about species, the fast-growing species and economically valuable species. After the Japanese colonization and Korean War, our forests were devastated and the soil condition was very poor, infertile. If you want to grow economically valuable tree species, you need good soil condition. However, we didn't have such a good soil condition at that time. However, still we need to control erosion and to prevent flooding, so on. That's why we use the fast-growing species even in poor soil conditions. If you understand, black locust or alders are nitrogen-fixing species. They can grow even very poor soils while they are fixing nitrogens. In other words, while they are growing, they make soil condition better. So that's why we use the fast-growing tree species at the beginning to establish forests, to control erosion, to prevent flooding. Once soil condition gets better, we started to plant economically valuable species like timber trees such as pines, firs, spruce, so on. And then you asked if we used only local species or introduced the species. Answer is both of them. We used endemic tree species and also introduced many species from United States, Europe, including Germany, and tried many species from outside. But finally, we found that local tree species are better than introduced species in most cases. However, during our reforestation period, of course, we plant many introduced species also. Of course, we planted endemic species. That was the second question, I think. The final question was about genetic modification of tree species. If I understand genetic methodology, there are several kinds. For example, selection method, breeding method, so on. So we used traditional selection method to select good quality tree species out of wild tree species. And also we used the breeding technique to breed new variety or new species. And final one is introducing species from outside. As I already mentioned, we introduced many foreign species during reforestation program. In recent years, we are using genetic engineering to modify DNA of tree species, so on. But this requires quite modern technology. So this kind of technologies are being used recently, not in the 1960s and 70s in our case. But recently, of course, we are using genetic engineering to produce more better quality tree species. That's my answer toward the third question. Is it okay for you?
Да, спасибо. Я получил удовлетворен ответом, потому что вот с генетически модифицированным там этим немного было. Это все-таки это селекция, наверное. Я так думаю, я понял, что ну, генетические изменения это и включает селекцию, и традиционные, и современные технологии. Это изменения, значит, живые измененные организмы. Я, наверное, так понял вас. Если это так, то, значит, я полностью удовлетворен.
Yes, I got your answer, and I believe that based on your answer, it is genetic modification, perhaps based on selection, and maybe also it includes both selections, covers both selection and latest technologies, and I believe that you have modified the live organisms. Is it the answer you meant?
Yes. Yes.
Спасибо. Thank you very much.
Спасибо. Thank you. And I guess it's close to lunchtime there. So we have 3 more hours after lunch. So after lunch, I will have 2 more presentations and some discussion hours. So hopefully you understand the first topic. If you have further questions or comments on my first presentation, you are welcome to ask after lunch during discussion time. Is it okay for you?
Yes, dear Professor, thank you. Thank you also to our colleagues for their questions. We will allow ourselves to go for a short break for lunch, and we will definitely be having more questions as we move on to other presentations and discussions. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. If I may just add, you may have noticed we have been recording the webinar, and we will have the recorded version available to all colleagues afterwards. And so for the lunch break, we will pause the recording and we will resume in an hour's time. Thank you, Professor San. Thank you, colleagues.
And if I may jump in just to thank, of course, Professor Song and all the colleagues, just to apologize as well. I will have to be away after lunch. So I wish you fruitful deliberations, and I will definitely watch the recording when the whole webinar will be completed. Thank you very much, Dr. San, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Спасибо.
Спасибо. think we start in a few minutes, Professor Son.
Включите микрофон, включите. Включите.
I think we can start now, Professor Son, if you're okay. Yes. Thank you, colleague. Sorry, it was a short lunch break, but thank you for coming back.
All right. Did you enjoy lunch there? It's 5 p.m. here in Korea.
Yes, it's an end of the day for you.
It's okay. We are working late usually, so it's okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. I read a message from Vladimir saying there are some other questions from your partners. So is it okay to take questions now or after the second presentation? Do you have any suggestion? Would you like to ask question now or after the second presentation?
Yes, if you allow us, we will ask the questions after the second presentation.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Okay, now do you see the PowerPoint screen there? Okay. Can you see in Tajikistan also? Can you see the screen? Okay, good. So second presentation is about valuation of forestation in terms of disaster risk reduction. During the first presentation, I introduced some experience of Republic of Korea reforestation, and also mentioned some benefit of reforestation. Then you might understand that forestation or reforestation would be good in terms of reintroducing vegetation, and it brings many benefits. Then next question would be how much money we need to do reforestation or forestation. And then benefits would be more than the cost. So next topic is valuation of forestation, reforestation. How much money we need to put for reforestation, then how much benefit we can get after reforestation. So this is the topic for the second presentation. And during this presentation, I will talk about the main frame of valuation of reforestation. And during the final presentation, I will use the policy brief publication and explain in details about the valuation. The main contents are same. However, in the final presentation, I will explain detailed information on methodology, how we calculated the cost of reforestation, how we estimated the benefit of reforestation. Then finally, we get the benefit and cost ratio. So whether we can conclude that reforestation is economically viable, something like that. Okay, so that's the stream of my presentation. So this study was done with Dr. Sarwat also. As you see here, Dr. Sarwat is one of the co-authors. And Dr. Anil, he is well-known environmental economist, and my colleague, Professor Lee at Korea University. We worked all together for valuation of reforestation. In terms of terminology, we used forestation or reforestation at the same meaning. So sometimes I use reforestation, the other times forestation, but basically it's the same. Okay, so can I start now? Are you ready in Tajikistan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully you are not sleeping, sleepy after lunch. Okay, we will see. Okay, these are the content of my presentation. First, a brief background of the study. And second is estimation of investment and ecosystem services. And the third one is analysis on economic feasibility of the reforestation program. And finally, conclusions. First, background is similar to the previous presentation. Mainly, I will introduce the history of reforestation in Korea. So I will skip some of them. So some photos. This is old photo in Korea, early 1910s, more than 100 years ago. Girls are playing in playground in front of the traditional house, jumping. Again, this is the same photo I showed in previous slides. You see, this is kind of a typical for harvesting scenery in local area. You know, rice is the main crop in Korea traditionally, still also. In fall, we harvest rice, and then we sort rice. Look at the background of the photo. As you see here, it's mountain area, but you don't see any trees. This photo was taken in early 1900, more than 100 years ago, but eventually you don't see trees at all in the mountain. In other words, more than 100 years ago, especially during Japanese occupancy, they harvested trees and brought them into Japan and other countries. So mountains are barren, almost barren, no trees. And in this photo, you see a lot of fewer wood. Cows are carrying fewer wood. Also, this man is carrying fewer wood to sell in the market. So fewer wood consumption was very high in Korea. So people were gathering litters and fuel wood from the mountain. So fuel wood was one of the main reason for deforestation in Korea in old days. And this photo shows the scenery in Seoul, the capital city, about 100 years ago. On the background, you see some mountains, but still very small shrubs only, not many trees. But on your upper right-hand side, you see some trees, but no litter or small trees underneath. So people were gathering all those litters and understory species for fuels. So that was happening in Korea. Also similar scenery at the background, high mountains, but almost no trees. So deforestation was widespread in Korea in early 1900s. And this photo shows the right after the Korean War. We had the Korean War from 1950 to 1953 for 3 years. So devastated the country during the Korean War. So you saw the same photo, not many trees in the rural area. So again, I will skip, but the Korea Forest Service was established in 1967 under the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and 73, Forest Service moved to the Ministry of Internal Affairs or Interior for active reforestation. And 3 main principles, as I mentioned: nationwide tree planting, fast-growing tree planting, economically valuable tree planting, so on. So people were planting trees. And erosion control was a big task. So we had good forest engineers to do the job. So eventually, erosion control was completed. You see students, middle or high school students were carrying stones for erosion control during our reforestation project. So these mountains has been changed to these beautiful mountains nowadays. So you see the changes in Korean landscape after reforestation. So right after the reforestation activity, it becomes greener and greener, something like that. So I'd like to draw some lessons from our reforestation or forestation experience. One would be very key lesson would be comprehensive project. In other words, we combine the related component together. In other words, cultivating seedlings, planting, tending, securing enough fuel, and support local incomes, so on. Not just planting trees. We combined several components together to achieve successful reforestation. So I would like to stress this point again. If you want to have a successful reforestation, not single tree planting activity won't guarantee the success. So combination with other components would be necessary, especially local people income should be secured or supported. And also some other factors like a strong leadership, public-private partnership, in other words, government and local people partnership, and administrative and technical support. These are also very important. So again, community-based forestry activity should be emphasized. So government should work with the local people closely for reforestation. Is everybody following? Is it still okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me know if you have Any question or comments, or you feel too fast or too difficult to understand, just let me know anytime, okay? You just tell me. Is it okay?
Yes, it's all okay. The speed and all.
It's okay now, right?
Yes.
Okay, then I can continue. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about ecosystem services. You know, forest ecosystem provide many kinds of ecosystem services. Ecosystem services includes disaster risk reduction, DRR, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, landscape, recreation, air purification, you name it, water yield, erosion control, and so on. So, forest ecosystem of the Republic of Korea provides a substantial amount of ecosystem services after reforestation. However, investigation on economic feasibility of forestation at national scale is lacking. I think many developing countries, including Tajikistan, have considered forestation or reforestation programs. However, economic feasibility is uncertain. So maybe you are not sure if reforestation is economically feasible. So investigation at national scale is highly limited. We don't have many cases because only 4 countries like Germany, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, and United Kingdom succeeded in reforestation after the World War II. So we tried to investigate national scale economic feasibility of reforestation. So these are the objectives. A preliminary analysis on economic feasibility of national scale reforestation program focusing on disaster risk reduction. I see some of participants of this webinar are coming from agencies for hydrology, environmental protection, climate change, something like that. So disaster risk reduction would be quite important in your aspect. Then question is, reforestation is feasible in terms of disaster risk reduction? So considering cost of reforestation and benefit of disaster risk reduction and the main ecosystem services, including soil erosion control, water yield, and carbon sequestration in the Republic of Korea. That's the key. We like to estimate cost of reforestation, and also we like to estimate the benefits of DRR and some other ecosystem services after reforestation. So we developed a historical analysis on economic feasibility of national scale reforestation program, including investment on reforestation and ecosystem services in the Republic of Korea. So we gathered statistical data such as meteorology, topography, landscape, disaster damage, forestry data. These would be the input data, and then we use different models to simulate soil erosion, water yield, carbon sequestration. And then finally, we assess economic feasibility. So we collected some statistical data and use them as input data for modeling, and then assessed economical feasibility. Okay, and next topic is estimation of investments and ecosystem services. Maybe it's the same in Tajikistan. Then Korea Forest Service annually reports reforestation activities like area and monetary investment of forestation in statistical yearbook of forestry. So you would have data on area and monetary investments of forestation in Tajikistan. We have those data, and annual investments should be converted to present value in 2010 by annual consumer price index and exchange rate. If you plant trees in 30 years ago, 50 years ago, or even 10 years ago, the money at the time wouldn't have the same value as the money at present time. So we need to convert any kind of investment into present value. So in this case, reforestation happened in 1970s, 80s, 90s, even year of 2000, so on. And we invested money. Then we converted all those invested money into present value using CPI and exchange rates in US dollar scale. The annual investment on reforestation program was 279 million US dollars per year on average from 1960 to 2010 in terms of present value in 2010. So here I just briefly explain how we calculated cost of reforestation using CPI and exchange rate. So as you see in this figure, our reforestation started from 1960s and continued through 2010. Then investments happened in 1960s and 70, 89, and something like that. And then we convert all those investments into the present value. Do you follow me? Okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then, as I mentioned in previous slides, there are many ecosystem services. However, we cannot calculate all benefit of ecosystem services. So we selected 6 ecosystem services in this case study. First category is disaster risk reduction, DRR, which means forest ecosystem can affect disaster risk, normally suppressing occurrence and magnitudes, including landslide, forest fire, and flooding. These are the disaster. Then forest ecosystem reduce these disaster risks. So we call them as disaster risk reduction, DRR. And among many ecosystem services, we selected 3 ecosystem services like water yield enhancement, soil erosion control, carbon sequestration. If we plant trees, trees are growing and they capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and sequester. So reforestation improves carbon sequestration. You understand that. And when we plant trees in steep slope, forestation decrease or prevents soil erosion. So soil erosion control is one of the benefit ecosystem services. You also understand that. And if we trees in the mountain, water in the streams, in the watershed increase. That's the water yield enhancement. Also, as I mentioned, landslide, forest fire, flooding will be decreasing after forestation. So we select those 6 ecosystem services for valuation. Okay. Again, as annual investments were converted to present value in 2010, same annual benefits were converted to present value in 2010 by annual CPI and exchange rate. So we did some calculation to change old benefits into the present time benefits in money-wise. Okay, then how we quantify damage by disasters? First, landslide. We have statistical data of damaged area. Korea Forest Service produced statistical data on damaged area from 1976-2010. Then we can calculate the damage by disaster using this equation. Annual damage equals unit cost of recovery times damaged area. Okay. After this calculation, we show the trend. And then the damage had been fluctuated, as you see in this graph, during the period from 1.4 to 308.7, quite highly fluctuated. So we can conclude that there was no significant trend in the damage with the time passage. as you see, no clear trends, either increasing, decreasing, no trends. So we quantify the damage by disasters. First, landslide, no significant temporal trends. In other words, even after reforestation, landslide didn't change a lot, okay? Second, flooding. We use the Water Resources Management Information System. This system directly provides annual monetary damage by flooding from 1971-2010. And then we show the monetary damage by flooding from 1970 to 2010. It fluctuates a lot. The minimum, average, and maximum annual monetary damage were $75 million per year. Average was 1,766 million, and the maximum was 7,330 million US dollars per year, something like that. It fluctuates. But statistically, if we analyze all these data, a slight decreasing in terms of victims. Monetary-wise, not clear, but in terms of victims, in other words, how many people were damaged by flooding, that's the number of victims. And as you see here, it's decreasing. You see, from 1970 to 2010. Number of victims are decreasing with the time. And forest fire. Again, Korea Forest Service provides a statistical yearbook of forestry indicating monetary damage by forest fire from 1980 to 2010. We do not have forest fire damage before 1980. So the damage before 1980 was extrapolated by a regression model of monetary damage. So this is the equation. Damage equals 60 times volume of forest fire damaged tree volume. Okay, and then this figure shows the annual monetary damage by forest fire. Sometimes very high, but the other times very low. So variation is very high. So the lowest one is 0.1 to highest one is more than 110. So it varies a lot. But average monetary damage by forest fire is about 5.8 million US dollars per year. And there is no significant temporal trends in the damage. Okay. These are the three components of disaster risk reduction. Now, fourth one, soil erosion. When there is a heavy rainfall, surface runoff occurs in watershed and causes soil erosion. You understand that. The amount of soil erosion is decided by precipitation, soil property, land cover, and slope. There is a model simulating soil erosion. So the model is soil and water assessment tool we call SWOT. SWOT model was used to estimate hydrologic runoff and sediment yield with the land carbon map as input data. So we need this kind of input data to run SWOT model. So input data, topographic data with the slope, aspect, elevation, land carbon map, distance from the city, forest carbon map, forest cover, soil map, soil series, weather data like precipitation, wind, relative humidity, and temperature, so on. We need these kind of input data to run SWOT model to simulate soil erosion. During 1970 to 1985, precipitation slightly increased, but soil erosion was reduced by half, strongly suggesting that forestation can help soil erosion to be reduced. You know, if precipitation increases, usually soil erosion also increased. However, even though precipitation increased, soil erosion decreased by half, meaning reforestation helped soil erosion can be reduced. Especially 82% decrease in erosion during 35 years was due to increase in forest area. So we increased the forest area, and those increases in forest area contribute to sharp decrease in soil erosion. Okay? Still, are you following me?
Yes, Professor, we are following.
Okay, okay, good. And then another ecosystem services, water yield. Water yield is concept for quantifying the forest functionality of providing water resources, which can calculate the total amount of water resources provided by the forest. If you have a forest, amount of water resources increase. So we can calculate the relationship between amount of forest and amount of water resources. The water yield model included in the INVEST model. This model is widely used model. This model based on the ecosystem service concept. So we use the INVEST model. To use INVEST model, we need these input data. For example, precipitation data, annual precipitation, evapotranspiration data, annual evapotranspiration, soil and plant data, like depth to root restricting layer, plant available water fraction, and land cover with the forest cover, watershed variable with the soil depth. So we collect these data to run INVEST model to estimate water yield after reforestation. So water yield was correlated with the forest area until 1990. However, it was correlated with the precipitation after 1990. In other words, reforestation program was very effective at the early stage. After reforestation, water yield increased sharply. However, as tree grows more and more, water yield effect would not be high compared to the early stage. That's the meaning of these photos. So 1970s, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, year 2000, 205. But as you see here, we have reforestation program in early 1970, and then the blue color increased sharply until year of 1990. But later, not much change in 1995, 2000, 2005. In other words, reforestation program was very effective in water yield at early stages. In other words, 20 years would be good time period to increase water yield after reforestation. And carbon sequestration. We simulated FBDC model. This model is developed by my lab, my own research lab, and we quantified change in total forest carbon sequestration. In this figure, we showed changes in carbon stock in biomass, dead wood, soil organic matter in litter from 1954 through 2010. As you see here, these are sharply increasing. In other words, as a tree grows, more carbon sequestered rapidly. However, still increasing but slowly in dead wood, soil organic matter, and litters. Okay, and when we convert these increases in carbon sequestration into carbon credit in terms of money unit, it increases sharply after 1970s. It takes some time to show the increase because tree need some time to show big increase in growth. So after several years, total carbon credit increase sharply. But after some years, the increasing ratio is slow. You know, once trees get bigger, the growth rates get lower. So this figure shows that kind of a trend. Okay. And the damage by soil erosion was estimated by being multiplied to 7,515 using the substitutional unit cost for dam. And the benefit of water yield was estimated by being multiplied to 969.5. That's the substitutional unit cost for them. And the benefit of carbon credit by carbon sequestration was estimated by being multiplied to 16.73 US dollars per ton. That's EU ETS price, okay? And then we evaluate the DRR and other benefits. We should set a reference level of disasters and ecosystem functions in order to compare decrease in DRR and increase in ecosystem functions. We need to set a reference level, okay? In DRR, we have two reference levels. First is normal reference disaster level. That is disaster level before 1969. That's the average disaster. And conservative reference disaster level, that is disaster level before 1976 without one extreme event. Okay, so this is just a normal average one, but this is conservative reference one. And the other three ecosystem services like soil erosion, water yield, and soil sequestration, carbon sequestration. Amount of soil erosion and water yield before 1967. That's the average one. That's the normal reference level. Then carbon sequestration had no reference level because Korean forests were almost carbon neutral before reforestation program. Then benefit